Okay, good afternoon. Today we're going to be looking at how our legislature works. We've just started on Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution, learning about the powers of the legislative branch. So now we're going to take a look at the upper and lower houses and how a bill becomes a law, who can introduce a bill, and where these ideas come from. Okay. Congressional committees. Okay, these committees play an important role in the lawmaking process, and this is where most of the work takes place in Congress. If you're a member of Congress, you will be assigned to a committee. In the House, each committee is only allowed to work on one assignment at a time, and whereas in the Senate, these committees can work on up to 2 or 3 different assignments at a time. Here I provided you with just a little template on how you can organize your notes. The more organized you are in taking notes and having this information, the easier it's going to be for you to review, to study your notes. It's a very, I would say it's a very important tool for you to learn how to take notes and how to organize notes in order for you to be successful in your endeavors and whatever it is you plan to do beyond high school. So there's a little template there for you. You can choose to follow, just organizing between the different committees that we're going to talk about, some of the permanent committees and some of them being temporary committees. Again, just a little template there you can choose to follow if you'd like to on how a bill becomes a law. That way it's just provided a bit of a step-by-step. I have gone ahead and filled in step 1 and step 2 for you. I've highlighted there. That way you kind of have an idea as to where this information needs to go. And then that way you can also make side notes because there is also additional information there given to you on the slide of introducing how a bill is introduced and where it starts as being introduced in either the House or the Senate. You can make the little side note next to that. Again, you can choose to follow this template to organize your notes if you want to. If it helps, that's great. If it's something else that helps you more, then by all means do it that way, just as long as you have some way of organizing this information. And again, another template I've given you there to organize what happens to a bill after it's been passed in both the House and Senate. All right, so we're going to start with a standing committee. Now, a standing committee is a permanent committee and handles most of the legislative business in both the House and the Senate. Okay, their job is to investigate and get info through hearings and investigations. These standing committees are separate, meaning that the House will have its own standing committees filled with members of the House, and then the Senate will have their own standing committees that are filled with senators, members of the Senate. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about subcommittees. These subcommittees are just smaller divisions of these standing committees. Their main job is to review any proposed bills that have been sent to them by these standing committees. And again, these subcommittees are separate. Okay, the subcommittees in the House are made up of members of the House, and the subcommittees in the Senate are made up of senators, members of the Senate. Okay, and these are also permanent committees. So we have our standing committees that are permanent, and we have our subcommittees that are permanent and separate for each house. Now we have our temporary committees, okay? These select or special committees are created to deal with some specific issues or specific problems at that time, okay? They're not permanent. They're specially selected committees. again, separate for both the House and Senate. So a special select committee in the House is comprised of members of the House, and a special or select committee in the Senate is comprised of members of the Senate. Some of the specific problems are that a special or select committee could be composed to deal with would be like the terrorist attacks in Benghazi. That being a special event of grave importance, obviously, to national security. The House and or the Senate could choose to put together a select committee to investigate these terrorist attacks in Benghazi. Now we have our joint committees, okay? A joint committee is a permanent committee. These committees are not separate for the House and Senate, but rather they are comprised of members from both, okay? So in a joint committee, you'll have members from the House, and then you will also have members from the Senate. Their job is to deal with issues that would affect both House and Senate. And you see our little example there being the library. Joint committee for the Library of Congress, their job to oversee the Library of Congress. Then we have our conference committees, okay? These conference committees are temporary committees, okay? Much like your select special committees. However, these conference committees are also joint, okay? These conference committees are made up of members from the House and the Senate. These conference committees are temporary, and they come together in an attempt to iron out any differences between two versions of a bill that is being passed by the House and Senate. A perfect example of that would be the coronavirus relief bill that we have right now in both the House and Senate. The Democratically controlled House, the Republican-controlled Senate are introducing two separate versions of a coronavirus relief bill for the United States. They are trying to negotiate and compromise to develop one singular bill, a bipartisan bill, meaning both sides are happy with and both the House and Senate will vote to pass, okay? So a conference committee would be put together to try and iron out and negotiate the differences between those two versions that are being introduced by the House and then the separate version being introduced by the Senate. Okay, so how a bill becomes law, this is just a little step-by-step breakdown. Okay, first, a bill is introduced in the House or Senate. It's very important to understand that a bill can be introduced by anyone in the House or anyone in the Senate, and it can start in the House or it can start in the Senate. It doesn't matter where it starts, and it doesn't matter who introduces the bill. Now, obviously, if it starts in the Senate, a senator would propose this bill. Whoever proposes this bill will now be that bill's sponsor. If it passes through the Senate, it would then need to pass the House before being sent to the executive branch to be signed into law by the president, and vice versa. If a bill starts in the House, it would need to pass, be sent to the Senate, pass the Senate before it goes to the executive branch to be signed into law by the president. Okay, so after a bill is introduced in either the House or the Senate, the next stop for that bill is it has to receive a number. It has to receive a number from the clerk. Okay, so a bill is introduced by a politician. At that point, that bill is taken, given to the clerk. The clerk will then stamp it and assign it a specific number. For example, if the bill starts in the House, you're probably looking at HB 001, House Bill 001, or in the Senate would be SB, Senate Bill 001. After the clerk assigns this bill a number, there's a couple of things that can happen, okay? It can go to a standing committee, which is a permanent committee, all right? If it doesn't go to a standing committee, or after it goes to a standing committee can choose to send it to a subcommittee and assign it to a subcommittee. If that standing committee does not choose to send it to a subcommittee, then you see that little arrow there pointing to the right. That means the bill is killed. It does not go any further. So we have the bill is introduced. The bill receives a number from the clerk. The clerk then sends it to a standing committee, and at that point, the standing committee can choose to send it to a subcommittee, or the standing committee can stop the bill there. Now, let's say the standing committee chooses to send it to a subcommittee. Okay, so the bill's not dead. The subcommittee, now with that bill, has a couple of options. The subcommittee can look into this bill, further review the bill in detail, and determine whether that bill needs to go to the floor, or the subcommittee can choose not to send the bill to the floor, and at that point the bill is dead. So a quick recap. A bill is introduced in the House or Senate by any politician. The bill receives a number from the clerk. The clerk then sends this bill to a standing committee. The standing committee can choose to send it to a subcommittee or choose to kill the bill at that time. If the standing committee sends it to a subcommittee, after further reviewing this bill, can choose to report this bill to the floor or kill this bill in subcommittee. So this bill never makes it to the floor to be debated, changed, earmarked, or voted on. So let's say the subcommittee decides to send this bill to the floor. All right. So the bill is then reported to the floor. On the floor, the bill can be debated. It can be changed if needed before voting to pass this bill. If once the bill is reported to the floor, during the debates, there are no changes, there is no compromise. The bill can be killed on the floor before it's ever even voted on. Now, let's just say the bill makes it through the standing committee, subcommittee, it reports to the floor, makes it through the debate. If changes are needed, they make the changes, then they present this bill for a vote. If the majority of the members in the House or Senate vote in favor of this bill, the bill would then pass. Now, this is where it's essentially a copy and paste from the House and Senate. Once the bill, let's say the bill passes the House, okay? So the bill was introduced in the House first, received a number from the clerk in the House, was assigned to a standing committee in the House of Representatives. House of Representatives decided to send it to a subcommittee rather than kill it. The subcommittee in the House of Representatives decided to report it to the floor rather than kill the bill there. The bill was reported to the floor of the House of Representatives. It made it through a debate. Changes were made if needed, and the House votes on this bill rather than choosing to not vote on this bill, which would kill it. And the House votes in the majority to pass this bill. The bill would then be signed by the Speaker of the House and sent to the Senate. Okay, Now, obviously, if the bill starts in the Senate, then it would just be vice versa. All right. If you look to the left there, it says draw an arrow from the bottom box back to the first box. If you are following the guideline that I gave you, you can do that. And essentially what that's telling you, or what I'm trying to get you to understand, is that same process we went through, that bill now has to go through again. Okay? So that same process from being introduced to reporting to the floor, debate, change, pass, all of that is the same process in both House and Senate. So, let's say the bill passes in House, it's signed, sent to the Senate introduces the bill, and it goes through all committees, which is where the bill spends most of its time. That's where most of the work is done in Congress, in these committees. It reports to the floor of the Senate votes, it passes it. The bill has now passed both House and Senate, therefore it has to be sent to the executive branch, and the president must sign this bill before it becomes a law, or the president can choose to veto this bill. The president also has a few options there, and we're going to go through those options right now. Okay, so after the bill passes both houses, the president themselves, okay, the president has a few different options. The president can choose to let the bill sit for 10 days. The president can choose to sign this bill, in which, if the president lets it sit for 10 days or chooses to sign it, that bill will become law and it will be enforced. Now, if the president chooses to veto a bill, it goes back to Congress, and we'll talk more about that here in just a few minutes. The president can choose to pocket veto a bill. If Congress adjourns within 10 days and the bill is not signed, the bill essentially disappears. Okay, now this can only happen if Congress is within the last 10 days of their session. Okay, if Congress passes a bill, sends it to the executive branch, in less than 10 days or less in that congressional Congress, they're up for election. They are now going to leave Congress and be reelected, hopefully, or maybe they lose their election. At that point, the president can choose to ignore that bill, and it essentially disappears. So it's very rare that happens, because it does have to be within less than 10 days of a congressional session. All right, so again, two ways a bill can become a law is if the president lets the bill sit for 10 days, or if the president signs it, at which point that bill is now law. That law is now going to be enforced. And again, if you're following my template, you'll see it right there at the bottom, or you'll see it right there about mid-page of the graph I gave you. Okay, so let's look at if the president vetoes a bill. Okay, checks and balances. Okay, checks and balances. President vetoes a bill. You have your executive branch now overriding the legislative branch. But now the legislative branch can also override the executive branch and can override a veto. Okay, the only way they can do that, though, is if they have a 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate. Okay, that means if the president vetoes a bill, it is sent back to the legislative branch where it started. And they must re-vote on this bill. In the House, they must have 2/3 vote, which means they must have at least 290 of 435 members of the House vote to pass this bill. If 290 or more vote to pass this bill that's been vetoed, it will then be sent to the Senate. Once it's sent to the Senate, the Senate would need at least 67 of the 100 members to vote to pass this bill. If they have at least 67 in the Senate and at least 290 in the House vote to pass this bill, the legislative branch would then override the presidential veto, and this bill will automatically become a law. It no longer needs the president's signature. But remember, you must have at least 2/3 vote in both House and Senate. So let's say you get 2/3 vote in the House of 290 of 435 members. It's sent to the Senate, and in the Senate you do not achieve 2/3. Okay, you don't get the 67 votes that you need. Let's say you only end up with 58 votes. At that point, the bill is dead. You have to have 2/3 vote in both House and Senate to override the executive branch. Now, somewhere on your paper, okay, you'll just jot this down wherever you're taking notes. Lobbyists and special interest groups, okay? That's where a lot of these ideas come from for these regulations and these bills, these laws that are introduced in Congress, okay, from these lobbyists and that represent these special interest groups. We're going to talk a little bit more about them in our next lesson. Let's see. There it is. Okay. So I've also provided you with some instructional videos here that just further break down everything that we've just talked about, kind of give you some visualization in that process, so that way it's not just, you taking notes and listen to me talk and explain and give examples, but you also have some video, some visualization to kind of help you through that process as well. I would encourage you to watch both of these videos, maybe watch both of them, a couple of times, depending on how you learn, okay? After you watch those videos, you can go to USA Test Prep, and I've given you just a few multiple choice practice questions that you can kind of do a little quick check, a little self-evaluation to see what you understand and what you don't understand. It'll be labeled How a Bill Becomes a Law, Unit 3, Lesson 2. You can take those little quick assessments multiple times. I would advise that you take it the first time without using your notes, okay, just so you can kind of go through and answer some quick, easy questions over what we've just discussed and what you're going to watch in those videos, and get kind of an idea as to what it is you fully understand and what you may not fully understand about that process and how a bill becomes a law, okay? Again, that is on USA Test Prep, How a Bill Becomes a Law, Unit 3, Lesson 2. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email me or call me at any time, and I will see you soon for Lesson 3 over our lobbyist and special interest groups and how they influence our Congress and these bills.